Babysitters of Redditors, what is funniest NSW scariest incident that happened when you babysit? I have the best story for this. A strange man walked into the house. When I was 15 I babysat for a neighbor. I would spend the whole day looking after their 3-year-old for the summer. Basically did a 8-4 shift. One day I put the girl I was babysitting down for her nap in the afternoon, and when I came downstairs a man was standing at the screen door at the back of the house. I asked him who he was and he proceeded to come into the house. We had been playing in the backyard earlier and stupid me had forgotten to lock the door, but it is a residential suburban area and the backyard was fenced, so I had thought I was safe. I asked the man again who he was, and he started wandering around the house. He was opening cabinets, turned on the radio and moved some pictures around on a shelf. He was not making much sense. At this point I was scared, but did not want to leave without the little girl I was supposed to take care of. I ran upstairs and tried to pick her up. Unfortunately, she was already in a deep sleep and did not appreciate being moved. She started to cry and complain. Then I looked up and the man was standing in the doorway watching. Some kinda crazy protective instinct came over me and I told him to stay there. He asked if he could see the little girl. I told him he could look from the doorway but not come in. To my relief he listened. He watched us for a while, then went back down to the main floor to move things around. In a bit he moved into the basement. I did not follow him downstairs. I took this as my cue to call for help without him knowing. Stupidly I admit I called my mom rather than the police. My parents' house was only a few doors away and I knew my mom was home. I scared the crap out of her when I whispered into the phone that there was a strange man in the house. Then I hung up on her because I could hear him coming back upstairs. He saw me with the phone and seemed to nod to himself. I asked him to please leave. He then opened the door to the garage and left through the garage door, leaving it open. My mom arrived as he was getting in his car. She had the forethought to look at the color and make of the car and memorize the license plate. We called the person I was babysitting for. Turns out this man is one of his best friends. He is mentally ill, had gone off his medication and had been missing for a few days. The police were actually looking for him because his family had reported him missing. He was totally not violent, but the whole thing scared the crap out of teenage me. When I babysat my little brother a few years ago, someone tried to break into the apartment we lived in. I was about 13 back then and we were both scared shitless. I don't know why they gave up, but I like to think it was the stench of crap wafting from my pants out of the building. As a teenager I used to babysit for my neighbors. I quickly discovered that their marriage was on the rocks when one of their daughters told me how daddy had been sleeping in a separate room. And the fact that mommy was coming home every time I was there with a different man. She would always tell me she would only be gone a few hours and would be home no later than midnight. I would end up falling asleep after the kids were put to bed and waking up at 4 AM to the sounds of her arriving home and ravaging some strange man on the front porch and then shooing him off. Her husband was a really nice man that worked his butt off doing night shifts as a nurse at the local hospital, and while he was working she was screwing around. Naturally I told my mom about it and she informed the husband because she didn't want her daughter being an accomplice in his wife's extramarital activities. They split not long after that and moved away. I was babysitting 2 brothers. One was maybe 7 and the other about 3. I should mention that the dad was a contractor and he had a lot of random construction things in the backyard. The 7-year-old picked up a doll that was about 4 feet long and pretended to be a Jedi with a double-bladed lightsaber. He wound up smacking his brother in the face and the 3-year-old was flung across the patio. The air that kid got was pretty impressive and I laughed. Until I saw that the kid was actually hurt and then I felt kind of bad. The 3-year-old was a little crap and he had been torturing me and the older brother for the past hour though, so I didn't feel that bad. When I was 13, I was pressed into watching my younger cousins, family friends that we interacted with like family, last minute when all of their usual sitters were unavailable. 2 kids, 9 and 6. The 9-YO parked herself in front of the TV and didn't make a sound. The 6-YO grabbed a 7 inches kitchen knife and started chasing me with it, and he wasn't playing either. He genuinely wanted to stab me and almost got me on the arm. I managed to hit his hand hard enough with a carving board to knock the knife out of his hand, at which point I snatched him off of his feet, one arm around his torso and the other with a fistful of his hair. holding his head back to keep him from biting me. I threw him as hard as I could in his bedroom and slammed the door behind him. His bedroom had a deadbolt, and I used it. This was before cells were prevalent, so I sat down in front of the TV and let my pulse die down while he pounded on the door. His older sister seemed unfazed, only offering he does that all the time to daddy. The kid must have pounded on his bedroom door for 30 minutes before finally running out of steam. When the parents got home, I only told them he chased me with a knife, so I locked him in his room. The dad just laughed, saying he didn't getcha. Did he? I didn't reply to that, just turned inward, as I often did as a teenager, and I never agreed to sit for them again. The kid grew up just as you'd expect, killing neighbor pets, in and out of JDC, sent to and thrown out of military school, fathered at least 3 children with 3 different girls. Somehow, he's avoided adult prison, but I'm not certain how. Spoiled as heck, too, as his family were well-off business owners and didn't deny him anything he asked for. Had a $60 K diesel pickup that must have had another $60 K in modifications, for example. That is absolutely terrifying. I once babysat these 2 kids a few times who lived around the corner from me who were probably 7 and 3. One day while I was on my way home from school to their house, I found them playing outside and the older girl ran up to me and said she wanted to tell me a secret about her new cat. She told me that when she squeezed its pee-pee that white stuff came out. I just kind of awkwardly said I'm okay and continued walking to their house. I never brought it up again, but it weirded me out for a while whenever I looked at her cat. I once babysat a brother and sister. The boy was probably 11-12, probably old enough to take care of himself and his sister while his parents went on date night, and just locked himself in the video gaming room the entire night. I had a blast with a girl. She was super cute and adorable, but she had a curfew. Bedtime came. I made her change and shower and go to bed. I noticed the parents had a baby monitor in her room, which seemed strange, considering she was like 6'8". So I went downstairs and turned on the television and planned on just chilling in front of that until the parents got home. The daughter gets up and starts making noise and talking, heard by me through the baby monitor. Being a semi-paranoid teenager, I went upstairs and put her back to bed. This proceeded to happen numerous times. I went to ask the brother what his recommendations were at a time like this and his response was, "Oh, mom and dad turn the light so she can't turn it on and just lock her in there." What? I thought that couldn't possibly correct, but eventually, I gave it a shot. I turned her fan so she couldn't turn the light on using the switch and closed the door. She went to bed, defeated. When the parents got home, they asked about how the kids were, and I mentioned that their daughter kept wanting to stay up. They then proceeded to relay to me the exact instructions the son had told me. Turns out, this was a common problem in their household, and this was a typical way of handling it. I nanny for a couple of boys, so every day is an adventure. Once I walked into the basement where 2 of the boys and some of their friends were playing. As I rounded the corner, the youngest boy is standing in his underwear with an exercise ball over his head, shouting the opening lines of The Lion King. The other kids were sitting in a circle around him. I just left. The youngest is a ton of fun, but he picks up things from his older brothers, inappropriate things, which is to be expected. But whenever I hear him saying something like that, I make him explain it out loud to me. It's hilarious. Not my story, but my GF's. I met her childhood babysitter a few weekends ago, and after the former babysitter was out of earshot, my GF casually mentioned her babysitter used to take her with her to go meet drug dealers to pick up drugs when she was like 9 years old. My first question was, how did she know what a drug deal looked like when she was 9 years old? And the weird part was that her babysitter was very open about explaining what they were doing, about what all the different kind of drugs were, what they were called, what the high for each was like, etc. I just kind of listened with my jaw dropped. I'm shocked my GF didn't turn out to be all kinds of fricked up, or that she didn't tell her parents. This was the time I stopped babysitting while I was a teenager. First story, a co-worker of my mom's needed a babysitter and I was roped into doing it. I hate kids, so these 2 boys were awful. The one kid, about 5, would go to the bathroom and then start screaming that I needed to wipe his butt, which seemed odd because I felt he was old enough to do it, so I didn't do it. Then I was picking up some of the mess and they opened the front door and ran off. They lived in an apartment complex and not in a good part of town. So I am running around looking for the kids. I decided after that night I was never going to have kids. Second story. Kid's dad taught him to flip on the couch. They had tile floors, so when he fell off the couch he hit his head pretty hard. I called my mom freaking out and had her come over and take care of the situation. Very first time I babysat. I was 14 and was watching a 1-year-old baby in the finished basement of a neighbor's house while his parents hosted a Halloween party upstairs and got raging drunk. 1. The baby choked on some crackers and I had to do the Heimlich on him. Then 2. Smoke alarm went off, so I grabbed the baby and hurdled over the baby gate to run upstairs, but they locked the basement door. 3. Broke through the basement door to a smoke-filled kitchen where they and their guests were all howling in laughter, drunk, at me. 4. My terror turned to fury and I handed the baby to his mom. They got all pee at me and said if I left it would ruin their party. 5. Fkin left that Mothfka and walked home. 0 shts given. I used to babysit a 4-year-old a couple times a week. I've sat for a lot of kids, and this one was the worst experience. Definitely not as bad as some of the other stories here, but yeah, this kid didn't have a lot of discipline in his life. I don't mean to criticize as I'm not a parent etc, but yeah, it was hard for them, especially as the parents were going through a divorce. My second day watching him, I'm in the kitchen and he goes to use the bathroom. A couple minutes go by and I hear him muttering something. No big deal. Sometimes you have to talk it out when you're doing your business. Then it gets louder. I can now hear him saying come on. He gets louder and louder. Now he's shouting come on. I go stand by the door and knock, asking him if he needs help, but he just keeps shouting come on. Come on. Finally he says wipe me. A couple weeks go by. I'm watching him again. It's time for a nap. So I take him upstairs. I'm in the laundry room when I hear the front door creaking open. At first I'm not sure I really heard it, but when I go check, sure enough the front door is open. I forgot to lock the bolt. I run outside and I can't even see him right away. He somehow managed to sprint down the street. Once I catch up to him I'm trying to get him to come back, but he won't walk. He goes limp on the sidewalk. Had to pick him up and carry him back, while he kicks and screams at me. The worst part. This is after a couple months of sitting him. He was cranky, so I took him to his bed, suggested he rest, and he became enraged. He's throwing crap around and screaming. I was afraid of losing my temper, so I stepped away. It gets quiet, and I figure he's just chilling out. A few minutes go by and he comes downstairs very slowly. I ask him if he's calm now and he nods. Then the smell hits me. I walk up to him. He's standing on the last step of the stairs, and I can see he's got poo on his foot. Upon closer inspection I can see there is poo all down his pajama pants. Oh lord. I look behind him, and there is a trail of poop that goes all the way up the stairs. The carpeted stairs. I go upstairs and find he had pooped on his bedroom floor and, of course, smeared it all over the place. I promptly stripped the kid, put him in the tub, and attempted to clean up the disaster that was basically embedded in all of the upstairs carpet. He also threw scissors at me one time, but I would still take that over the poop. In college I babysat for the state through a program where the gov would pay me to watch kids of single parents so the parents could go to work. Needless to say, I was in some pretty sketchy neighborhoods. Not so much as gang violence sketch, but as in my clients were usually the only person on the block who actually had a job and didn't spend their days drinking type of sketch. Anyways, at my regular place there was a pack of kids that roamed around, and one of them was bullying one of the little girls I watched. While they were playing in the yard of the house, I saw him whack her with a large stick he was carrying, and I ran over, took it away, and told him to go home if he couldn't behave. He ran off. I was getting ready to take the kids to the park. Our city has a free lunch program for kids at various parks, so I did that so that their parents had one less meal to worry about, when this guy, easily 6 feet 7 inches and 300 plus lbs in his boxers, only comes storming up to the apartment and bursts in the door. He's drunk, and is yelling about how I can't talk to his son that way. I don't remember much of what he said, but I do remember getting incredibly calm. I didn't raise my voice at all but told him that he needed to exit the premises for his own safety. Now, I walked towards him very calmly and he kept backing up. At this time I was 5 feet 3 inches 120 lb. I walked towards him until he was off the front porch, and he kept trying to yell, and I would use my best implacable authority voice and kept telling him to stop behaving so shamefully in front of his children and neighbors, and that any threats or violent actions committed by him or his children would be brought to the police. If he had any complaints about how I watched after my client's children, he needed to bring it up with her. He eventually left, wandered around the cul-de-sac for a while muttering, and went back to his house. Apparently that made me a bad butt in the eyes of the teenager in the house, who was too old for me to babysit and who had gotten in trouble for fighting before. When I went back into the house I discovered her hiding around the corner with a switchblade out ready to jump in and help me if I needed it. The 6-year-old daughter of a friend slapped my butt and called me sweetie. Actually, I was kinda speechless, while my friend and his wife just laughed their asses off. Edit. For clarification, I wasn't really babysitting her but keeping her busy and entertained, so my friend and his wife could get a few hours of peace. Probably something your friend does to his wife. I'm sure it was twice as funny for them. I babysat for a lady whose husband was in the army with my dad. Her husband was deployed and 2 of her 4 kids were at a friend's house. I was watching the younger 2, a boy 3 and a girl 6. Everything was going swimmingly until the boy started to have an asthma attack. His mother hated their house, which they had moved into about 2 months prior, and nothing was really unpacked. So this child is having an asthma attack and pukes all over himself and I didn't know where his inhaler or his clothes were. I called my dad, a medic, and he came and helped me out until the lady came home at like 3 AM. I think she went to a concert or something. IDR. I mean she paid me well but I thought the kid was gonna die. I used to babysit the kids in my neighborhood. It was more of parents see me outside and asking to entertain their kids for a few hours. I wasn't paid often but it was usually fun. I was 14 and enjoyed being around the kids. Since I watched all the kids in the neighborhood most of the kids became good friends. Ages ranged from 3-11. Well, one time I was watching all 17 kids at once. We were playing football. Well, one of the youngest kid up, John, grabbed the football but was afraid to move. So the oldest, Shane, scooped John up and ran with him to make a touchdown. John ended up being our new football. He loved it. The bigger kids would toss him to me. I'd catch him and run. Never saw a kid smile so big. John is 10 now and still talks to me about that day if he sees me outside. He's no longer the youngest of the group, but most of the kids, some have moved away, still hang out on occasion. TLDR. Gave a kid an amazing lifelong memory. Additional story. In kindergarten John told his teacher we wanted to be a football when he grew up. The teacher asked if he meant football player and John replied nope, just the ball. I was babysitting for 2 young girls, maybe 5 and 7 at the time, and they chased me into a corner under the pretense of tag, then asked if they could see my breasts. No whoop. A 9-year-old boy pulled his dad's gun out from under the bed and pointed it at me. He swore it wasn't loaded but I nearly crapped myself anyway. I never went back and hated walking past that house. Just about a month ago, I was babysitting my 4-year-old nephew. He still hasn't gotten the hang of pulling up his pants when he's done going to the bathroom, so someone usually helps him. Well, he went to the bathroom and as he came out, still had his pants down and starts singing rock and roll wee wee while whipping around his wee with his hands and dancing. It was the funniest thing I have ever seen a kid do to this day. I babysat for just about every kid in my neighborhood when I was growing up. My favorite memory of that was when I had to look after a couple of boys, 9 and 11 maybe, and their little sister, 1 or 2. It was always a bit of a chore getting the kids to go to bed, but I figured out a trip one time. They were running around the house and when they weren't looking I blew a raspberry on my arm and that made a big fart type sound. They both looked at me with huge eyes and clearly had never seen that trick before. So I turned around so they couldn't see and did it again to show it was a trick, not a fart. I promised them I would show them the trick if they promised not to give me any trouble getting to bed. They did, and so as they were tucked in I showed them the trick. I tell you, That is the best use for fart noises ever. There's nothing like bribing kids by teaching them new ways to annoy their mom. Mwahahaha. I used to watch these two boys, one was 8 and the other 10. It was New Year's Y2K and they were freaking out about the world coming to an end. We got permission from their parents to stay up to watch the ball drop. Once that happened we decided to go play in the snow to celebrate. Well, the 10yo had been a real dickhead all night and thought it was a good idea to sling a piece of ice at me. Well, hit me right between the eyes and knocked my butt out. I woke up, probably a couple seconds later, to see the 8yo lunge at the 10yo like a linebacker and knock this kid out. He's on top of him screaming, "You killed her, you butthole. She's dead." Somehow I had to try to get this little kid off his big brother without laughing or passing back out. I guess $40 was worth it. I babysat these 3 kids one time. 2 boys and a little girl. First night, these kids are angels. I'm all like, well, that was easy. Second night, Lord frickaduck, it was horrible. The boys decide they're not going to bed. I take their DVD player away and it turns into the oldest, 7, screaming, smacking a cup of water off the kitchen table, goes to throw his mom's laptop to the floor. Finally I get him back into his room and then he starts climbing out his bedroom window screaming at the top of his lungs, "My mommy is gonna kill me," because I was trying to get a hold of his mother, because I was not putting up with that crap. Whenever I babysat my cousin's kids, I brought over a Dragon Ball Z game that they liked playing at my house, and they lost their crap like they'd just won the lottery. My cousin and I were highly amused. I'm 26, and if you came over to my house and brought a DBZ game, I'd lose my crap too. I was babysitting this kid and he takes me to the computer to show me his cool computer game. Turns out it was a free demo disc of a flight simulator game, and it just looped through a 3-minute video of the game. And the kid had no idea he wasn't actually controlling the plane at all. Haha, dumb kid. They also had a really old, skeletal black cat that I didn't even know existed until the kids had gone to bed and I was alone in their creepy family room, and out comes this cat out of nowhere looking like death. I used to do that at the arcade with the demo videos that looped. I knew it was actually playing, but my mom wouldn't buy any tokens, but she still took me for playdates with other kids who did have tokens anyway. Last summer I babysat for my mom's friend from work. She had 2 boys. The youngest, about 10, chased me around the house with skeletons from his collection of dead animals because I wouldn't play with them. Side note, he said he found the animals already dead and cleaned the bones. I don't believe that he found them. I'm attempting to change a 3-year-old's diaper, but she is running around the house, trying to get away from me. In the meantime, her sisters are yelling at each other and fighting, so I take a break from the 3-year-old and go break up the fight. When I get back to the youngest, she is standing down the hall from me, diaper off. She looks at me, giggles, yells I'm pooping, and runs down the hall, leaving a trail of poop. I will never have children. It's been a whole hour now, and still no posting of a pervy dad with babysitter action. I don't know if I should feel relieved or just put the lotion and tissues away. One time the 4-year-old girl I was watching pulled me over to the hall closet, pointed to the crawl space and started crying. I kept asking her what was wrong and she said, "Clara and Jenny are trapped down there. It's really cold and they've been there a long time. They want out." Needless to say, I closed the door and never went into that closet again. I was referred to this family by a friend, so it's my first time there and the mom is giving me a rundown of things and showing me where everything is and all the jazz. Then she tells me that her youngest, who was a first grader at the time, has this problem where poop or whatever leaks out of his butt, and that if I see him run away into his bedroom that it's okay because he is just changing his undies. I didn't take her seriously until I saw that kid run in his room about 6+ times during the 4 hours I was there. This poor kid smelled like poop and the parents didn't really do anything about it. Oh, and he was the pickiest freaking eater ever. I babysat there once more and then called it quits because I couldn't stand the smell of her kid and the attitudes of both kids combined. I've been babysitting for over 10 years now and mostly the kids are pretty good, except for one. He was a nightmare, a case of the mom and the dad not being together and having different rules in different houses, so the kid not really knowing right from wrong. Also lived with his grandparents and the mother, so if mom said no, grandma or grandpa would say yes. Ugh. So anyway, the kid literally didn't know the word no. That's a nightmare in itself. He loved to play pirates, which in his mind was just beating the crap out of you with anything shaped like a sword, which in this case was a golf club. Ouch. Lastly, he was potty training, which I'm actually pretty good at, but he was so not ready to be potty trained. So he would be like, I has to go potty, so I'd walk him to the bathroom, he'd pee, wash his hands, with lots of convincing, and then run into the living room and crap on the floor. He thought it was hilarious. Me, not so much. This also wasn't a one-time thing. That was quite the summer. Child abandonment. I was 16, living in a foster home due to getting knocked up and thrown out of my house. Foster mother's friend had 5 kids and needed a sitter one night. I agreed to watch the kids for a few hours and she was supposed to be home by 8:30. At 10 that night I put the kids to bed after speaking with my FM and settled in hoping she would return. The next morning I got the older kids off to the bus stop for school and then my FM picked me and the younger 2 kids up. She took me to school and the younger kids to the police station. The days later she came pounding on the door demanding to know where her kids were. She became very agitated when we told her she needed to go to the police station to find her kids. Never saw her or the kids again. Still don't even know where the heck she was for those 4 days. Was wrestling with the 3-year-old I nannied. Wrestling consisted of me sitting on the floor while he ran at me. He'd put his hands out when he crashed into me, which led to the question, what's in your shirt? I just told him that's a part of me but let mom know, and she later explained boobs to him and that only girls have boobs. Fast forward a week or so and we're wrestling again, but this time, grandpa, a pretty hefty guy, was in the room with us. 3-year-old, with a confused face, looks back and forth between me and grandpa, then asks grandpa has boobs. I was babysitting a 1st or 2nd grade boy and was told by the parents to make sure he takes a bath. So he is taking his bath and I come in and tell him it's time for bed and it's time to get out of the tub. That's where he bolts out of the tub, bathroom, and house. So there I am chasing a naked little boy down the street trying to catch him with a towel. Was supposed to be babysitting my younger cousin, who was about 8 years old at the time. Just made her lunch, so I went upstairs to relax for a little bit. Come downstairs not even 20 minutes later to see her trying to use knives to cut her cast off her arm. Got a call from my seriously beloved brother a couple weeks ago at 5:47 am. Sis, me and girlfriend were partying, doing coke, and I think we did too much. I called an ambulance for her, and I am freaking out. My husband and I hopped up out of bed, sort of assembled ourselves, and were at their apartment in under 20 minutes. I watched my shamefaced brother and his humiliated girlfriend be carted off on stretchers and proceeded to care for their 4 children, 3 hers, 1 his, for the next 5 hours while they were evaluated in the efficacy overdoses. 3 of the 4 were old enough to wonder where their parents were. I told them that their mom and my brother had gotten sick in the middle of the night and had to go to the doctor, so we were there to have fun until it was time to pick up their parents. Thank frick they were young enough to buy it. My brother has expressed incredible gratitude and a desire to never touch sea again. Fewer words have made me happier, if they hold true. I babysat a 5-year girl and 1.5-year boy when I was about 15. I had to change the boy's diaper before bedtime and I clearly had no idea what I was doing. The girl proceeds to find one of her baby dolls and a little baby doll diaper and showed me how to do it. Slightly embarrassing. Scariest, baby bear was only about 4 months at this point, and he was on his play mat crying. I knew he was getting hungry and needed to go upstairs to get his boppy pillow to feed him, and I debated with myself whether to leave him on the mat crying and run to get it quick, or take him with me upstairs to soothe him a bit. I opted to leave him downstairs crying, and I'm really glad I did. Coming down the stairs I tripped over something on the stairway and tumbled down the whole flight and onto the hardwood. I hit really hard, but I was okay. But what if I have had baby bear in my arms? That would have been very bad. That genuinely scared me for a while, where I wouldn't carry him upstairs unless it was nap time. And then I was super careful. Creepiest, funniest. We have one of those Nest nursery cameras with night vision. Best things ever. However, when he wakes up, He will stare directly into it with these black soulless eyes from the night vision, and it's terrifying. When he was learning to stand, he would get right up to the camera and look at it dead on from inches away. One of these times I see him standing staring into it, and he drops one of his hands down. I see this kid dong back and straight up slap the camera off its stand, like a pimp. I lost it laughing my butt off. That's my mini Dave Chappelle. I've never had any NSW moments in any of my babysitting or nanny gigs. Kid time is kid time, nothing else. Edit. Baby Bear is a human baby. He has the nickname of Baby Bear because one, he had this adorable onashi that was fluffy and snuggly and it had bear ears and paws and everything, and he looked like a tiny bear cub crawling around in it, and 2 because Baby Bear is the cutest nickname ever. Used to babysit for a Mormon stripper from Utah already sounds like a bad joke. Well, went upstairs to check on said children and they were all taking off their clothes and the closest saying how mommy does it and touching each other. I just called her and told her I couldn't babysit anymore. Didn't answer any questions, just bounced. I didn't know what to do. I was babysitting 2 boys around ages 5 and 7. The mother had never told me the older one had a heart condition to where he overheats very easily. So the first day I'm babysitting them, supposed to keep watching them for a month 3 days a week. We go to the park and the older one collapses and starts puking after 30 minutes. Apparently I handled it well, as what all the other parents at the park said, but on the inside I was completely losing it, thinking holy crap, the first day I'm with these kids and gonna kill one of them. Ended up we went to the hospital and everything was good. We played Halo for the rest of the week and only went outside to swim after that week. Opening up the DVR menu on the TV to put on Thomas the Tank Engine for the boys, as suggested, and finding Frick My Wife P on the saved programs list. This was on the TV in the living room. I guess they figured since the kids couldn't read, who watches pay-per-view P on the TV anymore anyway. Babysat 2 French children when I was 17. A 4-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. The fact that they were French isn't too important, except they had just moved here, and their English still had strong French accents. The girl was picking her vagina, beyond the point at which I could ignore it, so I said something along the line of "What are you doing?" She pulled up her hand from her pink tights, reached it out at me with a low-browed grin, and said "Smell-I-eyed." What? No. Go wash your hands. Steps closer. Smell-I-eyed. Steps back. No, this isn't funny. Go wash your hands. It smells nice. I promise. Smell-I-eyed. Her chasing me around the house with child vagina hands ensues. It wasn't funny. No, that's pretty freaking funny. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye.